The only Ultra we've got so far in 2025 is an android. Ultra Perfect Cell, an amazing unit, but even the leader of the androids mains say he's fell off. I totally used that out of context, but I also got permission to do so we're running with it. Androids have failed in 2025, and honestly, from the build up, they were one of the more promising tags, but they failed to create a foundation that would allow them to be one of the most prominent teams in ranked PvP. They got a couple buffs here and there, but how did this happen? Well, it's something we should talk about and discuss their current condition. Question for the guys in the comments: if Androids was the best team in the game, would you use it or would you stick to what you have? Let's get into this video now. So to address how they failed so far this year, we need to address what they have. In 2025, they've only gotten 3 buffs, but one of those buffs are very special. I already mentioned Ultra Perfect Cell. In 2025, it's been 6 months and we've only got 1 Ultra, and that unit is a representative of the Androids tag. So naturally, you'd think the Androids tag would have some juice. And not to say it's completely dead, but it sure is not one of the strongest teams in PvP. Besides from Ultra Perfect Cell, we've had the 1% Sparking Android 18 and the 1% Sparking Android 17. They dropped on 2 separate banners, one being the Trunks and Gohan banner and the other banner being the Fusion Zamasu banner. Unfortunately, we haven't got any Legends Limited Androids, but we did get the Legends Limited MVP 17's Platinum equipment, which could be attributed to Androids for use. So the team does have a decent foundation. It's got 1 Legends Limited that is very valid. They've got 2 1% Sparkings that can definitely be used, and it has an Ultra. Regarding previous years or the previous year, I wouldn't say any other unit really stands out to be used on Androids. If I was going to mention anybody of note, it would be Legends Limited Super 17 and maybe the Gammas 1 and 2 of their Plat, but both of those guys have problems that I will mention quickly. So Super 17, I would say he's a bit of a glass cannon and only really thrives if you juice him up with Zenkai buffs, which can work because Cell's also red, so you can prioritize both of them at the same time. And then with the Gammas, I think it's a popularity issue of people not knowing that they could be valuable. They did get a Platinum equipment, but people just opted not to use them. So the foundation isn't completely bad, but people haven't opted in to use them. They do have good equipment, they do have decent units, but people are not using them. They are not thriving in PvP, so there's got to be a reason why. Now let's talk about the 1% Sparkings that I mentioned in their current lineup. The 1% Sparking 17 and the 1% Sparking Android 18. Both of these guys here can be used on Androids, but they have a special gimmick between the both of them. Because they are twins, the idea is that you run both of them together, and if you're doing that, as you run a 17 with an 18, 17 will get the ability to permanently nullify endurance. If you run an 18 with a 17, 18 will get the ability to permanently nullify endurance. But that makes them condition locked, so it's only optimal to really use those Sparkings with each other or a variation of each other. It just has to be that 17s with 18 and 18s with a 17 to get the highest value out of them. And I think that was too harsh of a gatekeep for what the Androids tag needed to thrive. These units had potential, and because they also represent the Future tag, you think they would also have got picked up on Future, but the fact that they didn't get heavily used on Future shows that the gatekeep was a bit too strong. If we relate to another tag, for example Daima, Legends Limited Super Saiyan 4 Goku, his restriction isn't based on a specific character but a tag, and a tag is much wider than a specific character, because if it was a specific character, it would depend on how many of that character that exists in the game, especially if they decided to do a specific variation of a character. So if it said Super Saiyan 4 Goku from Daima only gets indestructible based on the fact that he's running with a Super Saiyan 3 Vegeta, well, there's only one in the game, and that would be way too harsh of a gatekeep, because if you don't pull that other specific Legends Limited, then you won't be able to get his indestructible ever. But because they restricted it to the tag only, you've got a lot of options to pick from, and the Daima tag has a lot of good units which makes it work. Now with the Androids tag, they don't already have a lot of good units, and then to restrict them so tightly to specifically another character makes it so that that one mechanic that is bringing them all their life basically is useless. Now I want to add on top that these are Sparkings, so they're not meant to be the holy grail of Dragon Ball Legends. They're just meant to be good at least, or at least that's what we'd hope, and these units aren't even the greatest in the first place. So having their key factor locked behind a character specific gatekeep versus a whole tag makes it harder to run run these guys. I feel like if you just change the idea of 17 being restricted to 18 and 18 being restricted to 17 to them being restricted to Android specifically, it would have changed everything for them, and that would make Androids a much more runnable tag just off the rip. But I feel like this is one of the major factors as to why they weren't able to succeed, even though they had a good foundation, and when people saw this in their kit, people were very curious and thought it would be very valuable given the meta at the time. So you guys will know Dragon Ball Legends this year has somewhat moved against the idea of survivability. So units that have endurance and buff cancellation are basically getting wiped out, especially with the addition of Ultra Perfect Cell. These two units that I've been mentioning, the Sparkings, together are able to nullify endurance, but then Ultra Perfect Cell does that permanently anyways. So anybody with endurance that's able to cancel buffs, it will still get wiped out because Cell will permanently be able to do that, unlike most units who only get the ability to nullify endurance on their ultimate and their blue cards. So in short, the restriction is way too tight, which makes it so that there was no strong glue for the team versus you having to be forced to use these characters that are not necessarily great in the first place. Now, if you've got into this video so far, I want to thank you, because I did not mention this Legends Limited Zenkai on purpose. We're currently talking about Perfect Cell. Now, this Zenkai here, I would call him a complete bust. He had a lot of potential, but his core template was never good for his Zenkai to make him look good. I feel like characters that have the key charge gauge are very difficult to build up, and the fact that Cell's gauge is a one-time fill makes it way worse to use him. What his kit basically provides is the ability to tank and do more damage. Beyond from that, it's nothing really special, and that means he's only going to be a victim to power creep. But the meta at that time was already against him, which made him have no place on pretty much any other team. As we know, Future is much better than Androids, and even on Future, he didn't have a strong position. And this would be due to the surrounding factors such as Ultra Majin Vegeta and Ultra Beast Gohan. Having these two yellows exist is really traumatic for this Perfect Cell. We can also throw in there the Zenkai Gogeta Blue, who was being used a lot earlier this year, and having these yellows existing made it so that this purple unit would pretty much just get squashed. Given they were already handing it out like cookies, I imagine if they gave this guy the ability to permanently nullify endurance, he would not be a bust just like that. It would completely transform how people perceive him, because the meta made it so that people who had endurance and buff cancellation would always thrive. But with that in this guy's kit, would give him a bit more juice to hang with the people that are already on his team. Androids, their key factor would have been the ability to nullify endurance completely, but the two Sparkings they gave it to weren't good enough in the first place to hang, and there was no other pieces to really fill in the gaps to make it super valuable. I don't want to talk much about this Legends Limited, but very apparently it doesn't even feel like he got a buff this year because nobody is using him. One of the last points I want to bring up is priority order, and something you'll notice consistently with all the characters I've mentioned, they represent more than one tag. So let's start with Ultra Perfect Cell. I would say the main three tags that Cell represents in order would be Future, Androids, and then powerful opponents. Taking that priority order, naturally people would want to use them on Future more than anything because they had a stronger foundation with Gohan and Trunks, Fusion Zamasu, Vegito Blue and Goku Black Rose. They've had a build-up of pieces that allows them to flourish more than the Android tag by quite a margin too. Let's move on to another prime candidate, LLMVP 17. The tags that this guy represents in order, I would say, are Universe Rep and Androids. And only naturally, Universe Rep is being used way more, especially with the come up of the team, given that the 7th anniversary headliners are both Universe Rep, MUI Goku and SSBE Vegeta. Flourishing right now, one more than the other, but if MVP is going to be used, he's going to be used on Universe Rep more than anything else. And with every other unit I've mentioned in this video, they also represent Future first. So I think a core issue here is that the androids that are being selected, they're representing the Future arc more than anything else, which doesn't give androids any room to be aired out properly. For example, if they take an android such as Fusion 13, he's also a movies unit, but there's no movies buffs. So if they're specifically planning to prioritize androids, which they still could be, with movies not being a successful team currently, androids will be able to flourish given that that tag takes priority based on what the unit could represent at this moment in time. Now, I'm obviously aware that I'm making this halfway through the year. We're only 6 months in, which means that androids could still get some things to flourish. And if I was going to mention some things that they could get, this is what I would recommend. The purple perfect form Cell, I believe he needs to get a platinum equipment. I think it's about that time. If he does, I think people will still use it more in Future, but depending on how they tailor his kit, he can basically basically make Android the team it needs to be. The second thing I think they should do is give Android 17 and 18, the tag droids, a Zenkai or a platinum equipment. I think they are long overdue one, considering that they released right before the 4th anniversary, the last time we got a mastered Ultra Instinct Goku. The timing would make a bit of sense. And then on top of that, they need to drop a new Legends Limited Android. I don't care what the Android is, as long as it's not from the future arc. There's not many options given that we already have a Legends Limited Super 17, the tag droids in the game, perfect cells, or ultra perfect cell, but as long as there is a new Legends Limited for the Android tag, the team will manage, and the developers also build the units kit to fit androids more than anything else. The team will come up from the dead just like that, because I feel like the pieces they currently have are just missing a few bolts to put them in place. And that would pretty much be it to make androids a top team. I am also aware that the team wasn't prioritized this year in any way, shape or form, but they were getting buffs, whether it's behind the scenes or on the surface to you. So naturally, I'd think they'd be a team that people would use. And in Dragon Ball Legends history, they've been a popular team, but I guess not at the current moment. That's going to make the end of the video. Let me know what you guys think about the androids team. Personally, I feel if you are a tag that has got an ultra in 2025, you should be flourishing in some way, shape or form. And I feel like there's no exception to that, considering Cell, he's the only ultra we've got so far. He represents your tag and your tag is doing nothing. That's crazy, man. Honestly, it's ridiculous. But hopefully you guys did enjoy this video. If you haven't already, make sure to press the subscribe button. We're on this grind to 200,000 subscribers. I appreciate you guys for watching, man. My name's Zakashi, guys, and I'll see you guys in the next one, man.